Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you here this afternoon. Well, just a little bit of background. I am um, first a sociolinguist, so I'm work with language. And so the idea of names and what the importance of names is very like part of what I will be thinking around. And so I'm gonna show you a little bit of what happened. I've been living in New York since 6 years ago, and I've been developed like a lot of love for the city and how diverse it is. And basically, this presentation or the project starts in that corner that you see in the map. That it's on Diamond Street. That's the upper part of Manhattan, like around like the 200 street on the Upper West area. And there you see the second name there that is Isayachem Moronta. And I started to see the names, the second name before that in other parts, but I was not clear how they work. And then close to this specific intersection, that specific corner, where you see the blue line there, there is a mural that you see in the picture. And it took me a while to realize that the name on the street and on this portrait were for the same person, this young uh, this young person whose name is Isaiah Moronta, and that is he was a member of the community, as you will see. So when I moved to Inwood, where this street is part of, Inwood is mostly a community with a strong population of Dominican descendant people, and it's actually, there is a historic district of the Dominican community around it, and the area is also called Little Dominican Republic, and it's a very particular and very like energetic community. So why the other streets? I decided to name these the other streets because we sometimes don't know about those streets so much while we live in New York, and they are not in the map actually. And well, in the OSM map, I have not seen them, and the thing is that these names are honorary street names, honorific names, secondary street names, or co-names. So these terms refer to the same. And there are official names that the city council defines in local laws, but for making these laws, they go from the community boards into the city council, and then they get approved. And it applies to intersections, corners, or portions of streets. Like Broadway goes across the entire like island of Manhattan, but in certain specific area that is from 190th Street to 211, it is called Juan Rodriguez Way. So that's really important to know because like this specific area that is located in the Little Dominican Republic has the name of the first Dominican who came to the US, and it's story of someone who came on an English ship and said, I'm a free person, I'm gonna stay here. It's a black Dominican who decided to stay there. So what's in a name? That's the linguistic question. There is memory, there is memorialization to on how we do the process of creating a memory. There is identity to the fact that when we are born, there are places where there are laws of how many weeks can pass before a baby gets a name. And there are communities also where people get to choose their name at certain age for the cultural part on when they have to decide what the name is gonna mean. So that can happen according to culture. And there is also a human right to have a name for children. So when something happened, like in a case, it could be also emotional processes, like in some literature, the one I mentioned here, Bordenhorn and Wambrook, talk a lot about the 9/11 process and how like naming the people who were there was super important for the city. And there is also an issue of power, and there are also issues like, for example, identity theft, that like a name has so much behind it. So it's a very complicated phenomena, but we have it every day around, and we don't think about it all the time. So I'm gonna go back to this point, that corner that is super close to the place where I live, and that's the street in my neighborhood. I created a Wikipedia page for the street, for that specific corner, because I wanted to know who Isaiah Chemoronta was and why he had this name, like the street has this name. And he was a 13-year-old person who was born in Washington Heights and raised in Inwood, and he lost his life attempting to save a friend in the Hudson River in 2020. And he was seen as a hero to the community. And actually, one of the leagues, I think it's basketball league, was changed into the name with his name, and he's remembered by this. The graffiti that I show you usually has flowers because it's very important for the Dominican community to mourn and remember the people that from their community in the streets. Like when someone passes away, they do an altar on the street where the people used to sit because they have the practice of sitting outside and enjoying with the neighborhood. And I'm not trying to othering when I say they, but I'm originally from Costa Rica, and we don't have this practice. So like this changes, like according to, it's a cultural thing that changes, that in Nicaragua they do it, in Costa Rica we're more like, I guess, introverts and stay home, something like this. And so for me it's also very beautiful to see how this community is so active and how they use the public space. And I have heard these stories, for example, that somebody wanted to sell food near to this graffiti, and the dad of Isaiah came and said, please don't do this, it would be disrespectful of the memory, and they didn't do it. So that's part of how this community works together to create their local and space memory too. And so for this project, what I'm doing is documenting on OpenStreetMap the honorary names of the street of Inwood and Washington Heights that are now in the Little Dominican Republic. And I want to describe, this cannot be on the map because this is intangible, the memorialization practices of this community via the vehicle naming streets, including a gender perspective, because at least from my observations, I think there is like a difference between how male are more like remembered, for example, than women, and this is related to other communities I'm part of, like Chicas, that have a map on the street, the streets of women, that has like how many, like in different cities, how many names are after men or after women, and that, and how much of this like can impact also the public space and the memory. And well, for those of you who are not so familiar, Washington is there, it's right there. And if you see the map of Manhattan, it's like that upper area. And there are two different limits that I have like to think of. One is like the one of the community district 112, that is between West 55th and West 220, and the other one is the Little Dominican Republic, that is in the same area, but it starts in 145th Street. So it's like a little bit bigger, but 10 blocks. As I said, El Barrio is amazing. I have this picture of the chairs because when you go through the neighborhood, you find all kinds of chairs. Like the city don't have enough sit-ins outside, but people will bring any chair. You have like a collection of beautiful chairs, and this is on a corner on Dyckman Street and Sherman Avenue, and you will see the chairs there. Everyone will be respecting this space, and then people will sit there and talk, and in some areas people will be playing domino, and there is always like a lot of things going on. And for me, the question is how to do this project, because I'm kind of new to OpenStreetMaps. Like I have been working with Chicas, but it doesn't necessarily mean like I have been editing the map. I've been learning working with maps for a couple of years, but it's more like the theoretical part of things like this. So I'm like, okay, now I have this challenge of go to the map and actually do this job. So I actually revised documents available on the honorary names of New York City, focusing on the specific area of the project. I found that there are documents for the entire like city with the 5 boroughs, and also look for archival materials if needed. For example, I went to the Dominican Studies there is a mistake there. It's Dominican Studies Institute at CUNY. And also look for information on like New York City in general. And the other things that are important is to visit the place and revise the data vis-a-vis the places and create public information like in the Wikipedia I showed to you. And as I said, I also want do the descriptive part of seeing like the gender topic on the streets. And so what I'm working is with these streets that I also already described, and these are resources I found, the New York City Honorary Street Names map, that if you see on the image, it says Wikipedia for street names. This is a map created by one of the offices, the New York City Records and Information Services. But one issue is that this is an ArcGIS map that is like hard to find somehow, I believe, because it was not the first things that I found. Great thing is that the data is open and is on NYC open data, so there is the points and the lines, and you can get both files, and that could be uploaded to OpenStreetMaps. And also, this map has some information on why the streets were named after different people, but it doesn't have the sources. And for example, in a case like the child I was talking about, it can be a little bit lost just to have some like paragraph telling you very specific things. That's what something like working also with Wikipedia will be so important. And then there is a map by about the Dominican historic neighborhoods and the map of the city with the different divisions. And as I said, the NYC open data files. A problem here is that, and this is the current observations, and it's like I'm gonna just close with observations because it's the current state of this project that is like on its starting point. It's first the location, the map versus the field. As I said, Isaiah Moronta Way is in that corner. The picture that I took is in that corner, and it's the thing I see every day. But according to the map of NYC records, it is on the other corner, actually. So it's completely wrong on that. And actually, in the corner close, the first corner, the one where it actually is Isaiah Moronta, they said that is Reynaldo Atanay Way, but it's not there. And actually, there is no sign for Reynaldo Atanay anywhere in those corners, who was a journalist, a Dominican journalist who fought for freedom of speech, according to what I learned in the Dominican Studies Institute. So how can we follow up on this case? I had to go to the community board documents and the city council documents. And if you see the first image on the top from the community board says that Isaiah Moronta Way is located, they decided to designate the northwest corner of Diamond Street and Eagle Avenue. It's very specific which corner, but then the city council passes this into law and they don't have which corner it is. It just says at the corner of Diamond Street and Eagle Avenue, which is exactly the same that says for Reynaldo Atanay. So this is a problem because the information gets lost in the process. So there should be also a process of archival research to see where the locations were. And this is what is also important to go to the street and see what is happening. And of course, New York is huge, so I'm like wondering about the area where I live at, but this should be like spread and more people volunteering to see what's going on with the streets, because actually the city, the names as they come from the community boards, they have very local names. So what you find in Harlem is very specific to the history of Harlem, to civil rights activists, to musicians. There is El Barrio that is for more Puerto Rican people who live there, and that has more of people from that community. So the issue is how to make a documentation also to have the information on the city. And as a final thought, my interest is and I think this is very important on why I wanted to come here, is to look for collaboration, organizations, or like people who know, for example, I don't know how to get this data file and upload it to OpenStreetMap. I've not done that yet. So it would be really good to have this kind of collaboration, and so that we can, as a community, bring these names to our like thoughts in general. And thank you so much.